Hey everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski taking a look at the eighth race on Saturday at Gulfstream Park, the Grade 3 William L. McKnight. It is a mile-and-a-half test on the turf for the older runners. It is also the start of the Rainbow Six sequence on Saturday, Pegasus World Cup Day at Gulfstream. If you don't want to play the Rainbow Six this day, you might want to wait for Sunday when there is a mandatory payout in the Rainbow Six at Gulfstream, so be aware of that. This field, Craig, we've got 12 in the main body and a number of also eligibles, but do note that the number 6 Palazzi is expected to scratch from this race. Our DRF colleague Mary Rampolino did report that he is cross-entered in the Connolly at Sam Houston and is going to run in that spot instead. So feels like there will be at least one also eligible drawing into this race. The number 13 through 16 are on the AE list, so we'll see if any of those runners participate here. I think at least one of them going out for the Mike Maker barn, and he has quite a few in here, as you can see, is also cross-entered in Sam Houston, so we'll see which ones ultimately do participate in this McKnight. But Craig, seems like a fairly wide open affair.
It does. It's a good, strong field for grade 3. I think we have some runners capable of running better races than that grading would indicate.
Yeah, we've got a couple of Chad Brown runners in here that could take some money, including the number 7. As well as the number 7, Verstappen, who feels like another classy runner who could attract some support in here. Haven't yet seen the morning line for this race. Well, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector before we get to the main contenders. And Craig, I think that this makes sense. The number 8 Cellist is a horse that does some of his best running on the front end. He's not always quick enough to make the lead, but he did lead when he put forth one of his best efforts in the Sycamore 3 back at Keeneland. So I could envision Martin Garcia getting aggressive, sending him towards the front. But you've got some others that have primarily competed in shorter races, like the number 5 California Frolic or the number 9 Grand Sonata, that might have a bit more speed going this longer distance.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those top 3 actually take the lead. I think it's kind of up to the jockey in here. I don't see a fast pace flag. That's what I look for in these mile-and-a-half races. So I think it'll just be a good, honest race.
Let's go through this field in post-position order, beginning with the number 1, Francesco Clemente. And this horse makes a big late run in his last race to just miss the Grade 2 Hollywood Turf Cup Planetario, who beats him to the punch this day. He's a pretty classy, solid horse in Southern California, and Francesco Clemente just can't make up the ground that he gave away at the start of this race. And that's really been the issue for him, Craig, getting out of the gate. 3 starts in a row in this country. He's broken very slowly every time. Now he's drawn the rail. He figures to get shuffled back to last in the early stages if he breaks slowly again. So he's probably going to have to pass them all. There's quality here, but I worry about that trip.
I do as well, particularly at Gulfstream. It's not really friendly to deep closers. Maybe the mile-and-a-half will help. I think he might take some betting support. He surely will based on his connections, but also the fact he's coming out of a Grade 2, dropping down to a Grade 3. But I wonder if that's really a drop. That's not the strongest field that he faced last time in the Hollywood Turf Cup.
The number 2 is Marwad, and he's been competitive at this level on occasion, at least one occasion, when he was second at a decent price in the Grade 2 Mac Diarmida back in early 2023, but unfortunately went to the sidelines after that, and 3 starts since trying to return last fall, Craig. He's made slight progressions, but hasn't yet gotten back to that level. I was hoping to see more out of him in the Red Smith 2 back, and last time in the Fort Lauderdale, that was just too short for him, so he's stretching back out to the right distance, but I do wonder if this horse is ever going to get back to that good effort that we saw at Gulfstream last year.
There are definitely some questions. He's a horse that if he's a big price, which he very well could be in this field, I could see myself taking a shot with him, given a good inside post, working out a trip, but there are definitely some question marks on his current form.
One of the most intriguing contenders in this McKnight is the number 3 Stone Age, who is also coming out of that Fort Lauderdale. He finished 5th that day and is another one that probably wants to go longer than that mile-and-an-eighth distance. And he gets to here, stretching back out to the mile-and-an-eighth. But I just question what we're going to see from him, Craig, now in his 4th start for the Chad Brown barn. He's been a little bit disappointing. I think more was expected of him in the Sword Dancer last summer. Then, again, didn't really show up with the kind of efforts we had seen from him earlier in his career for Aidan O'Brien in that Turf Classic. So he still has to sort of figure out how to deliver a top effort in the Chad Brown barn. But he is being reunited with a former regular rider, Ryan Moore, who is quite familiar with him from his Aidan O'Brien days.
This one seems to be quite the enigma. I mean, it was the 2022 Breeders' Cup where he ran second in the Breeders' Cup turf. It's been all downhill since then. He's had his chances here in the States and it hasn't worked out. Now he drops all the way down to a grade 3. If he's ever going to get the job done, it seems like it would be here. But there's some big questions, and I suspect he'll probably take more money based on Ryan Moore than he probably deserves.
I wonder if he's a horse they try to get a little bit aggressive with because he's been successful using a forward running style in the past, and this pace situation does look a little bit murky. The number 4 is Value Engineering, and he's another horse that needs to get back into form. I mean, he's been around for a while, has been competitive in these graded stakes races, going marathon distances in the past for trainer Mike Maker, as well as when he was previously in the Chad Brown barn, but felt like his form has tailed off since returning from a layoff last year, not competitive at Turfway, and then last time out, maybe was a little shuffled back in that 8 Challenge Jerkins going 2 miles, and perhaps 2 miles second off a long layoff was asking a lot of this horse. But even if he gets back to his best races, Craig, I wonder if he's still just a cut below these.
Yeah, that is a question. He's run speed figures that would put him in the winner's circle in a race like this, but they were quite a while ago, and that recent form leaves a lot to be desired.
The number 5, California Frolic, figures to be a long shot in this race. He just hasn't been competitive against weaker company in some recent starts. He's now stretching back out to a marathon distance, but he wasn't able to get this far in the Pan American last year against what was probably a softer field than this, so he'd be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, unlike Value Engineering, he doesn't have any past speed figures to go back to. He's a 5-year-old. It seems like he would be a stretch.
We'll skip over the number 6, Palazzi, who's likely to come out of this race. The number 7 is Verstappen, going out for the Brendan Walsh Bard. And he's not a horse that necessarily wins all the time, correct? But he almost always shows up with a competitive effort. That was the case last time out in the Red Smith when he got run down in the late stages by Masterpiece and Soldier Rising. But I thought he did well this day to chase the pace. There was a leader that kind of ran off in the early stages. He made that first move to take over an upper stretch and just gets a little bit tired in the late stages, but hangs in gamely for third on this day. And he's just a horse that you can rely on to show up going this 1.5 mile distance.
Yeah, his speed figures fit very nicely in here. And I didn't really like his trip last time. He was kind of in that chase mode, chasing a couple horses that were just out there winging. You can see the red fractions kind of took over the lead by default, maybe a little prematurely, but I thought he ran well. And I think he's a very strong contender as he drops down the class ladder a little bit here.
The number 8 is Cellist, and he is a horse that is coming off a narrow loss last time at Turfway Park. That was on the Tapeta surface there, but he was running against a Tapeta superstar and Wolfie's Dynagos, who just seems to win every race that he is run over on synthetic, and took a good late run at that horse that day to almost get there. He's stretching back out to a marathon distance here, Craig, but I'm not really worried about it for this horse. He's been successful going 1.5 miles in the past, including 3 back when he was narrowly beaten by the Charlie Applebeak, Dolphin Shipper Bold Act in the Sycamore at Keeneland. A repeat of that kind of performance makes him a contender here, and I think that forwardly placed style could work out pretty well for him in this race.
Yeah, I like what the pace projector showed. I think that's probably how he should be ridden. At shorter distances, he's dropped back off the pace, but you can note in the Timeform USPPs, those were races with very fast paces. Probably not going to be as much pace in this one, and I think he will find himself up near the front end.
The number 9 is Grand Sonata. He's one of the few coming out of that Fort Lauderdale. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race. He is involved in the finish, but has to settle for 4th on this day, making a good late run through between horses, though some others might have had tougher trips than he did in this spot, and he's going to finish ahead of some horses like Stone Age, who's fading between horses in those Peter Brand Silks, and another one further back in the pack, Marwat, behind him. But Grand Sonata finishes well this day, Craig. He's tried the 1.5 miles once before in the Turf Classic last year over a yielding course at Aqueduct, and was not really competitive that day, just sort of fighting for 5th place with Stone Age on that occasion. So he's going to have to show a little bit more going this longer distance, but maybe he can be forwardly placed on the stretch out.
Yeah, I think he will be up a little bit, and I don't want to hold that 1.5 mile race against him given the yielding course that it came over. So I see giving him another shot. I just wonder if it's going to be the ideal for him. And he has the speed figures to be competitive, but the post isn't great. And I think he's a big question mark here.
The number 10 is Rock Emperor. And Craig, I think we know what we're going to get from Rock Emperor at this point. I mean, he's competitive on occasion, but the wins are pretty few and far between. His last victory came in the Bowling Green against four rivals at Saratoga in 2022. Since then, it's just been a lot of either minor awards or no shows. I mean, you can see from his Timeform US past performances, he's gotten fast paces on a number of occasions, but just doesn't seem like the late kick has really been there lately.
Now, you would think a horse who's won a grade one and a grade two like he has would be a heavy favorite in here, but he's hard to trust. And as you note, his only real good performance of late came at Woodbine, a course which is very favorable to a late runner like him. And even there, with a perfect trip, he wasn't able to get the job done.
Personally, I've never loved him going a mile and a half. I just wonder if this is a little bit far for him. The number 11 is Anglophile, and he is a newly turned 4-year-old. So I think even though his speed figures look a little bit light compared to some others in here, you might want to project some improvement for this horse. I thought he ran really well three back at Kentucky Downs when he came up the inside to beat Far Bridge, who was the heavy favorite on that occasion. That was a game effort and a step forward going a longer distance for a horse who I think has shown that as the distance is stretched out during his 3-year-old season, he seemed to appreciate it. Not going to care about the dirt race two back, but last time out, that Tropical Park Derby, it just felt like a prep race, Craig. I mean, he was a little out of position early, but was really firing to the stretch that day. Even though he didn't get there, I really liked the finish that was on display on that occasion. And he's cross-centered in the Pegasus World Cup, so the World Cup turf, I should say. So the connections obviously think highly of him if they were thinking about taking a spot in that race. He's too deep on the AE list, so unlikely to get in, but I'm fine with him trying to stretch out to a mile and a half here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the speed figures. That 115 and 117 he ran back over the summer as a newly turned 4-year-old. I could easily see him progressing into the 120s here, which would make him a contender.
And rounding out the field on the outside, in the main body of the field, I should say, is the number 12, Red Run. He's one of the few Mike Maker trainees drawn in these outside post positions. He's a horse, Craig, that's just looking to get back into form. He was not really competitive, going a little bit shorter in his last couple of races. Did finish fourth behind Cellist in that Sycamore 3-back, but wasn't really in position to win that race. And I think the big issue for this horse, Craig, is just that turn of foot and the finishing speed. I wonder if he really possesses it to necessary to be competitive with a field like this at this level.
I would agree. And I've mentioned the Gulfstream course a couple times. His running style is really not conducive to this course. And you have to question the form he's in right now.
Yeah, he was very wide last time in that Fort Lauderdale. If you're going to make an excuse for him in that race, I think that was it. But I just wonder if the top performance is really there for him. There are some also eligibles that could potentially draw into this race. I think we're expecting at least one of them to, but they all seem like they are potentially big prices in this spot. So, Craig, let's throw up our picks for this William L. McKnight. And we're going in slightly different directions here, though I respect your top pick for Stop, and I kind of think he's the horse to beat.
Yeah, I really liked this race last time at Aqueduct. I just think he inherited the lead a little too early. It wasn't the greatest trip. Takes a step down the class ladder, and I think he's just the best horse in here.
Yeah, I toyed with putting a horse like the number 8 Cellist on top. I think he's got a good trip coming into him in this race, but I ended up being most intrigued by the number 11 Anglophile, who I do think is going to be a price in this race, anticipating he doesn't draw into that Pegasus World Cup turf. I think this is a good spot for him. I like him stretching out to this mile and a half distance, and I think some of his recent form is a little bit better than it looks. So the number 11 Anglophile for me, and the number 7 Verstappen for Craig in race 8 at Gulfstream on Saturday, the William L. McKnight. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.